Welcome to the Empowered Essence podcast, where we liberate you and empower you to let your soul lead the way in life and business. I am your host, Lorentz, sharing my thoughts and intimate conversations with featured guests on human design, energetics, and spirituality to provide you with the tools you need to tap into your most authentic self. I am here to empower you to walk away feeling ready to live your most expansive and purposeful life. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Empowered Essence podcast. I am Laura Lorentz, and I am so excited to welcome you into this space. I am smiling from ear to ear because we are finally here. It feels like a long time in the making to get to this point. I came up with this idea, or I had this download for this podcast 2 years ago. And not exactly how it stands today, but I had this vision for myself, this, holding a microphone, speaking to women all around the world, empowering them. And I didn't know how it would unfold. I knew I wanted to have a podcast at some point in time. I didn't know what that looked like. And 2 years ago, I sat down with a pen and paper and I was trying to jot down different names for the podcast, different concepts for the podcast, but nothing quite felt right. There was just something that, it just didn't feel like the right time, but I knew in my soul that this is what I was here to do. And so life got busy and I kind of forgot about the podcast. And in the fall of last year, I created a program. And as I was coming up with the name for the program, it was called Empowered Essence. And I remember saying to my coach at the time, I was like, this is my podcast name. I know I'm going to use this for this program right now, but this is going to be my podcast name. And so the name dropped in. And then over time, I was looking for someone to help me with editing and getting my podcast off the ground. And the lovely Sarah Glendenning came into my life just in June of this year. And I've been working with Sarah to get it off the ground. And all of a sudden, all of these pieces started coming together. The concept of the podcast, the name of the podcast, the person to support me, bringing it to life. And it really got me thinking about divine timing. We have these visions for ourselves. Like, how often do we have these things that we want to do or that we want to achieve? And we set timelines around it, or we push really hard to get it done. But oftentimes we're met with friction, or we're met with resistance, or something doesn't feel right, but we still keep going after it. We still keep doing it. We hit our heads against the wall. Like, why is this not working out? But what I've been really trying to sink into a lot more in my life is this idea of divine timing. We are all on our own path, and things shouldn't feel hard. Things shouldn't feel like you're met with resistance. Yes, there are going to be fears. Yes, there are going to be things that come up that you got to work around and figure out. But it shouldn't feel like we're met with resistance. And it shouldn't feel like there's friction, like we're going uphill with things. And so this spring was really when my podcast started taking form. And I really sunk into this idea of, this is the time. This is the time that this podcast is going to be birthed. And even the guests for my podcast all started coming in, and, I was talking to people and they were like, yes, I love this idea. I would love to be a guest. And so it's all just been flowing. There's been some hiccups, like, times when I've wanted to record and, my kids were sick and things like that, but I didn't feel like it was not the right time. I felt like it was the right time. I knew it was the right time. It was just this like knowing in my soul that this was the right time for these messages, this podcast, these conversations that I'm about to have with all of these incredible guests that I've got lined up. This is the time for these messages to be shared with the world. And it's just a knowing. It's just this intuitive knowing. And I'm seeing the shifts in the world right now. And there is just this need for women in particular to share their voice, for more people to embrace their most authentic self. There's so much going on in the world right now with burnout rates and depression and mental health, like the mental health crisis. And what it is, in my view and in my opinion, is just this cry for people to really step into their soul's callings. How often is it that people go to work every day and they do the same thing every day and they're not happy, but they do it because, well, that's all I've been taught. That's all I've known. That's what my parents did. That's what my friends do. But when we have podcasts, or when we have books, or when we have speakers or people in our lives, or people that we find through Instagram and social media that are not living these regular lives, that are not living by societal standards, societal norms. And all of a sudden we're like, wow, I can do that. It's almost like it gives us permission to do that. But that's the beauty of expansion and finding these expanders in our lives. So my hope for this podcast is that you feel seen, that you feel expanded, that you learn something about yourself, that you hear a conversation that sparks new ideas for you, that sets you on a new path, or it gives you ideas and creativity for something that you didn't even know was possible for you. Because that's how my journey started. My journey started with listening to podcasts back in 2020. I went on my own soul searching journey. I was on maternity leave with my firstborn child, and I felt lost. I had worked in a corporate job my entire life, and being home with my daughter, like, I felt disconnected. I didn't, everyone says when you become a mother, you feel this sense of purpose. And I didn't feel that purpose when I was on maternity leave. And when I started connecting in with these other women that were mothers, that were starting businesses, I felt like I found my tribe. I felt like I found my purpose. And so being connected with them, I just felt so expanded and I felt so seen. So that very first mastermind I had ever participated in, a lot of those women in that mastermind are like my dearest, closest friends today. And some of them will be guests on this podcast over the next few weeks. But that's the beauty of it, is it all just starts by listening to a podcast, finding someone on social media, and all of a sudden your world just becomes expanded. That you are, you get this like idea or instinct that maybe I'm meant for more. Maybe what I'm living right now, maybe there's something different for me. And so I hope that this podcast sparks something within you, that you feel that way, because I know listening to other podcasts that I felt the exact same way. I got nuggets, I got ideas, and it really just snowballed from there. And so I'm so excited to bring this to you. And like I said at the beginning, I do trust in this divine timing. I know that this is the moment that these messages are meant to be shared with the world. And coming back to the divine timing piece, surrender has been something that I've been really trying to lean into a lot more in these last few years. I went to business school. I work in a corporate job. And so I am surrounded by make it happen, do it. You're rewarded based on how much you do. And as a projector, I'm not wired that way. I am here to be the guide for people. And so understanding and learning that I was a projector made so much sense to me, why things felt so difficult, or why I didn't really resonate with a lot of the people that I worked with on a daily basis. Why did I find things so hard? Like, just to focus on some tasks at work often felt so difficult because they were very heavy data and analytics, or heavy like creating PowerPoint presentations and like building these like immense things. And I always wondered, why was I so different? Why couldn't I do the things that people were doing? When I went into a leadership role in my corporate job, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm meant to do. Like I just naturally stepped into that role. At the time, I didn't know that I was a projector, but it makes so much sense, guiding and leading people. So what I want to leave you with today is that everything is in divine timing. It's not about pushing. It's not about forcing. When you feel that friction coming up in your life, maybe it's time to surrender. Maybe it's time to take a break. Maybe it's time to sit in anticipation. Through this process, I didn't necessarily wait for the right conditions. I sat in anticipation, and there's a difference between waiting and sitting in anticipation. I knew I was going to create a podcast. I knew it in my soul. I knew that I wanted to do that. And I was open to receiving a name for the podcast. I was open to receiving help to get it started. And then I knew I would take action when I got those things. So those things dropped in and I took action. I did something about it. So oftentimes when we think that we have to surrender, you think it's all about waiting. It's not really just about waiting. It's about sitting in anticipation and knowing that in your soul that something is meant for you, but just not pushing, not forcing, not trying to make it happen. Because a lot of the times that pushing and forcing comes from a place of lack. It comes from this place of initiation. It comes from this place of, am I trying too hard to be seen? Which is something that I think a lot of projectors can relate to. But the initiating thing, that's any energy type except for the manifestors. Really, manifestors are the only energy type here to initiate. So I want to leave you with that. And I want to leave you with, what if you trusted? What if you trusted? What if you surrendered? What if you knew in your soul that whatever is meant for you is inevitably yours? To trust in the divine timing, to know that everything that you desire will come to you if it's meant for you. And if it's not meant for you, something better is on its way. So I'm so happy and grateful that you are tuning in. I hope you continue on and listen to more episodes, because I know that there's just going to be so much more magic that is birthed through this podcast. And until next time, keep shining your light. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Empowered Essence. If you loved this episode, don't forget to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. And until next time, keep shining your light.